Hello, everyone, and welcome to the special discussion of the Commoner Law Group, the UN and its attempt to steal our sovereignty, our American sovereignty. My name is Clint Grease, and I'll be your host tonight. We're going to go for a couple of hours. We'll hear from our esteemed guest, specialist in common law, Catherine Duran, who has been keeping a very good eye on the UN and its machinations over the last many years. And she's going to give us not only a quick summary of what we're facing, but really the implications for our sovereignty, which is really of critical importance to everyone. If we're not free, some have said, what's the use of living? So the United Nations, of course, is famous and has been around for a long time. The international body has taken its time over decades to really establish itself as the go-to authority in terms of world governance. And even though there are other international organizations that coordinate with the United Nations, if you just take the United Nations and its specialty agencies, it's quite an apparatus, international apparatus. And a lot of folks just recently became interested in the World Health Organization because of its power grab, its attempt to go from a more voluntary participation in pandemic response to a top-down control. And so it just happens that the governing body of the World Health Organization, the World Health Assembly, met in Geneva this last week to do a lot of business. They have their annual conference and they have a number of different motions that they deal with and placement for positions. You can imagine it's like a lot of conferences where people of like mind, public health professionals come together and they share information and make decisions about the best way to manage things. Well, the news, big time news amongst health freedom advocates this last week was that the World Health Organization was attempting a power grab by attempting to modify through the amendment process a set of regulations known as the International Health Regulations. And this is the International Health Regulations. And this is what the World Health Organization uses to authorize its actions. We actually had a session on that last week. I hope some of you were there. You can watch it online at our YouTube channel called the Commoner Law Group YouTube channel. You can go there and you can subscribe. And you can also choose to tell YouTube to notify you when we publish new videos. We're also moving to Rumble and other platforms too because of the notorious YouTube algorithm and censorship. The Commoner Law Group got one of its videos banned this week. If you remember the Liberty Clause with constitutional law professor Dina Pollard-Sachs, that was recently struck down. The reasons were vague, and I'll be sending out a message to everyone so you can have a sense of what's going on as far as censorship. But yeah, that session we did last week on the World Health Organization is currently available on YouTube, and you can watch it also on Rumble. It's called World Health Organization, or WHO Power Grab. And in that session, we just described basically what was going on. What was attempted was the administration of our President Biden, who proposed the amendments in the first place. And I'll just give you a quick summary. You can check out our email follow-up that we sent out with a link to my favorite reporter on this subject. His name is Rudetsky, and you can go to his links. He's been on top of it all week long, and his most recent report tells you what actually happened with those amendments. He goes into some detail about it, but briefly, a second set of amendments were proposed out of nowhere by kind of another coalition of states, including the United States somehow, and some working group that wasn't televised came up with some new amendments, and they were much more restricted. They're much smaller. Out of the many amendments that were originally proposed, maybe one section of the entire regulations was amended, and it was just to shorten the amount of time that member states were given to respond to the qualifications to these amendments that are being made. So it was definitely victory for we the people. A lot of people around the world made a big stink, and a lot of you contacted your representatives and other officials to let them know in various ways. So there was definitely a pushback at the global level amongst delegates, but they did pass this one set of amendments Friday late at night. It was took a lot of wrangling apparently all week long to try to just get people to pass something, and they did pass that. Close observers know that the regulations for rulemaking amendments have to be proposed 4 months in advance so that delegates have an opportunity to review them. And that did not happen in this case. So many people are saying, even though they voted on them, those amendments can't be truly adopted because the delegates weren't given 4 months. But you can get all that detail and more at Radusky's Substack and his other websites that are linked in the last email that we sent about that topic when we followed up. But, you know, as we were doing the World Health Organization power grab, which was a very specific event from last week, a lot of us were looking deeper into the World Health Organization and its parent company, the United Nations. Of course, it's famous. It's very controversial. A lot of people say we need to get out of the United Nations. Other people see it as the future. But in the end, government is government, and either it's going to be our servant or it's going to be our master. That's really the question tonight. So we're going to hear from our specialist, Catherine Duran, and look deeper into the United Nations. Many of you, I'm sure, are familiar, and we're going to take your comments and questions toward the second half of this session so that we can all benefit from the knowledge that you all have and the research that you've done. I'm sure most of you are somewhat conversant, at least, about the United Nations. As I said earlier, it's been around for a while, and we're familiar also with the calls to get out of the UN or at least stop funding it, or a lot of people want to try to improve it or salvage it somehow. We just need to deal with the fact that globalists or internationalists have been at work for a long time. The United Nations started officially, as you know, in the 40s, but international organizations that were created with the intention to govern, with the intention to regulate certain fields of industry or human affairs at the global level started a long time ago, before air travel, before telecommunications. Well, here you go, actually, telecommunications, the International Telecommunications, 1865. So already there were a group of people all over the world determining that we need to have some sort of regulation, or they always start out with cooperation or collaboration, right? Is usually the beginning, and then it turns into regulation. But as you can see, I put these in chronological order. You have the Universal Postal Union. Isn't that interesting? The International Labor Organization was one of the earliest, and this is clearly a socialist organization. And then along comes the United Nations in 1945. But right away, you have the Food and Agricultural Organization. The International Monetary Fund came very quickly, didn't it? Money. The World Bank Group in 45 as well. Here's Education and Science almost from the get-go. The International Civil Aviation Organization. World Health Organization, there it is, 1948. The World Meteorological Organization, the International Organization for Migration, International Atomic Energy Agency. You know, and what I'm noticing about a lot of these is that they, by the nature of them, they do have transnational interest, you know, aviation, flying across borders, flying around the world, telecommunications going around the world, migration going around the world, atomic, energy fallout could cross borders, meteorological weather, of course, doesn't pay attention to borders, and health, in terms of contagious diseases can also cross borders. So you can start to see that they had justification in the public's eye and the need for these kinds of things. And then it gets to property organization and tourism. So it goes on and on and on and on. In fact, I have a a photo here that was created in 2006, I believe. So it's probably even worse than what you're seeing here. But this is a map of the United Nations and other international organizations that aren't technically under the umbrella of the UN, but have the same kind of treaties that we have with the UN. So all of these organizations, you can see on this map where the offices are in red, New York and Washington, D.C. in our country. And over here in Europe, you have Geneva, big one in terms of how many different organizations are headquartered there. In the United States State Department even has a department called the Mission to Geneva, the mission to the United Nations and international organizations in Geneva, specifically to manage all the affairs of all these international organizations housed in Geneva. Let's just take a peek here at Geneva, because in Geneva, you have this huge complex. You can Google the images of it. I mean, it looks like a place where gods live. It's these huge, beautiful buildings. They have the International Labor Organization. Remember that one from way back, International Telecommunication Union, and then all these others, including the World Health Organization, the World Trade Organization. You've heard of that one, of course. And then while we're here, we might as well look too at The Hague right here in the Netherlands. That's where you have the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court. So even justice, this is an entire governmental apparatus, as you can see. Any one of these departments, if you will, have a mirror in our federal government. So that's not by accident. As you'll be hearing in just a minute, there's a lot of top-down control. I think of a pyramid, right? And this is completely the opposite of what America stands for. But here we are. So the World Health Organization is run by this man. I always like to personalize and show people he's an Ethiopian. He was elected the Director General of the World Health Organization, and he has a lot of power, especially in this international health regulations I was talking about. It's he who ultimately determines whether something should be considered a pandemic or not. He and an emergency committee that he appoints. So that's him. Here again is a list of specialized agencies and related organizations where, as the United States, we have treaties or on less than treaties, but just as binding, supposedly, executive actions, they're called. So we've entangled ourselves with these folks in one way or another. There's a huge research project just to be able to trace and track all of those things. But here we are. Okay, so James Roguski, again, is the fellow. If you want to find out about the details of what happened in Geneva this last week, I highly recommend it. He's got it well done. Well done. So again, thanks everyone for being here. It's great to see you here. Catherine gives enough examples in one area that you'll see how it works across the board. And then really more importantly, the implications for us as a people, as a free people.
We are not governed by global laws. America answers to no nation or king or organization of any kind except we, the people, alone. But one of our biggest problems is that the people no longer know the order of authority, and everyone seems to want their kings. So the local government takes their orders from the governors take their orders from the federal government when it pays. Local government takes its orders from the state and fed, and we, the people, we just seem to fear all governments and take our orders from all perceived authority. One of the things that it seems to be a surprise to people, though, not common knowledge, is that those levels of government that I just mentioned, which are constitutionally founded and grounded layers of government, are not running even by their own authority. They are actually being run by non-governmental organizations that are unelected, unaccountable to the people. So that's upside down. It's not supposed to be that way. In this country, the law is acknowledged as the law of nature and of nature's God. It is the supreme law, the highest law, and the written guarantee of freedom from rulers. That's what our Constitution is. It is our written guarantee of freedom from rulers. That's another thing to underscore. Freedom from rulers. When we have a constitutional republic, the government can only do what the contract says it can do, and nothing more and nothing less. And that is our guarantee of freedom from rulers, or the absence of rulers. God created man, man created the states, we the people created the states, and the states created the federal government in that order. But we have gotten far too busy devouring the blessings of liberty to be bothered with government oversight and accountability. We turned our backs on the responsibility and let the servant grow completely out of control. And now it's all upside down, with the Fed at the top and the states and then the people, and then there's God somewhere down, at the bottom. Remember, government is the servant created by limited supreme law. That supreme law is the Constitution. The Constitution is the contract. Government is what the contract says it is. And anything not in the contract is unlawful. So currently, everything that the thing we call government does is outside the contract. We did not contract for anything that it currently does. The thing we call government is 100% outside of the law, meaning lawless. That means the thing we call government is not government at all. It is by definition an organized crime syndicate. In order to fix the problem, we have to first identify it. But we don't have freedom and liberty. We do not have it. The only thing that provides for that is the American Republic, and it is gone. We have lost it. It's gone. It's over. That is a demonstrable fact. So what have we got then? One of a zillion unlawful self-expansions of government was U.S. membership in the United Nations. The stated objective of the UN Global Agenda for Sustainable Development, adopted by 187 nations in the world, is abolition of private property, commonly known as equity, meaning redistribution of wealth. The Earth Charter is the UN's replacement for our founding documents. So the goal of the global community is to replace our founding documents and our contracts. Well, here's their statement. This requires a change of mind and heart. Heard that before, right? This is a quote though, quote, "This requires a change of mind and heart. It requires a new sense of global interdependence and universal responsibility." Universal responsibility, not self-responsibility, not self-governance, but global responsibility, universal responsibility. Universal meaning we the people and our supposed elected representative governments, right? Further in that quote, "In order to build a sustainable global community, the nations of the world must renew their commitment to the United Nations, fulfill their obligations under existing international agreements, and support the implementation of Earth Charter principles, an international legally binding instrument on environment and development." And we have the 17 Sustainable Development graphic up. You can look up the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And it's a lovely, very colorful, very, bright and cheery and welcoming, exciting looking. You can go to any one of these buttons and they're all on there. Each one is a different page. And whatever your mood happens to be for the day, and your generosity, your benevolence, you can give. It's like, okay, so today we're going to fight hunger. So we're going to push the button for zero hunger, and then we're going to donate to whatever programs they have going on there. Good health and well-being, women's, there's something on there. Oh, no poverty, that's a good one too. They're all really good. Who doesn't want all this stuff? Gender equality and clean water and sanitation. Who doesn't want all of those things, right? But, all of the organizations that are involved in these, those are non-governmental, unelected, unaccountable organizations that are running our government. They are running the things. So when I say there are no elections, forget the elections. You cannot elect your way out of the situation. There is no representative government. There is no government. It's gone. There's no republic. It's over, because in a republic, we, the people, are at the top of the hierarchy. We, the people, are supposed to be in control of accountability, oversight and accountability, and we're not. And those things that we call government, your city council, your board of supervisors, your governors, your, even the sheriff, they're not answering to us. They don't answer to us. They answer to the non-governmental organizations, and those all fall within the Sustainable Development 17 goals. So all of their programs in organizations. So one example of the UN Sustainable Development at work is the North American Wildlife and Wetlands Connectivity Corridor, which calls for the rewilding of nearly all populated land in every state in America, way back to the way that it was before Columbus set foot on it. One of these connectivity corridors runs down North America along the western states. Wet, lovely, lush California is so beautiful, right? Now, how do you move millions of people out of their rural and suburban homes, off their properties along these zones? How do you move people off of their properties, out of their specifically rural and suburban homes along these zones, and return the land to its natural state? Well, you could shut off the water. Okay, you can call it a drought. You can actually manufacture a drought and call it a drought. You can tax them out. You can burn them out. The wildfires, the so-called wildfires, are not necessarily wild. They're actually purposeful and purpose-driven. Another project is the North American Dam Removal Project. The dam removal project, since 1999, most people are not aware of this. Since 1999, over 300 dams across America, many of them clean, hydroelectric, sustainable dams, more than 100 in California, actually quite a bit more than 100 in California alone, were demolished in order to eliminate the cost of maintenance. That's her reasoning, to eliminate the cost of maintenance and to repopulate the waterways with non-indigenous fish. One of the reasons California has been so lush and known as the breadbasket of the world is our ability to channel water. I wonder if people have any idea what California's natural state actually is. The truth about that is that it's desert. Our natural state is desert. Our ability to channel water is what keeps it so lush and makes it so lush and green and fruitful. Our sustainable development looks like conservation. It looks like good earth stewardship. It sounds like such a good thing, right? But it isn't. If it had, gnarly fangs and talons and looked like the grotesque monster that it actually is, and specifically Americans, but this is all over the world, people would not be alarmed and object to it. I mean, they would. People would. People, specifically, I guess, Americans actually would be alarmed, and we would all object to it. But it looks like such a wonderful thing, but it's not. So, Seattle City Planner, I don't know if you all know what's going on in Seattle, and it's quite a disaster. The Seattle City Planner, an advisor to the President's Council for Sustainable Development, which is actually renewed I think it's every 2 years, actually. It's at least every 4 years. Every presidential term, the President's Council for Sustainable Development has been renewed since 1992. So here's his quote. Participating in a UN advocated planning process would very likely bring out many who would actively work to defeat any elected official undertaking local Agenda 21. So we will call our process something else, such as comprehensive planning or growth management or smart growth. So there's more fancy words, see? So, smart, right? No, it isn't. And it isn't smart. It means the agenda for the 21st century. It is the blueprint for inventory and control of everything: all land, all water, all minerals, all plants, all animals, construction, all means of production, food, energy, information, education, all human beings, everything in the world. It's a framework for the new world order. So why are we telling you all of this? Well, it's because this is all out there. So I hope that if it's not in the forefront of your consciousness, that it's that these things are ringing true. It's because barely one scintilla of the goal of the one world UN agenda, that is a totalitarian centralized control center for global governance. And it is in fact the trajectory that we're already on. So a new world order is a 3-class system with a ruling class, an enforcer class, and then everyone else. That is what our government, our so-called government, the thing we call government, is being used to accomplish. And that is the future for ourselves. Actually, that's a present. That's the present. It doesn't feel like it yet because we haven't been told yet. We're never going to be told it's time to be alarmed now. Your freedom and liberty is gone. That's not going to happen. It's going to look and feel like it, but you will, as we have experienced the incremental theft of our liberties, it will continue on until there's absolutely none. Come on, we've seen people actually being locked in quarantine in their own homes, afraid to leave their own homes. But anyway, this is the absolute future for ourselves and our children if we don't turn this around now. So now, your local elected representatives don't answer to you. They are beholden to their local and regional NGOs and non-governmental organizations driven by the United Nations and driven by globalists, corporations, and bankers, right? Many of your sworn public servants are serving in duality as trustees on your school boards, your city councils, your boards of supervisors, your commissioners and mayors, and as members of those very NGOs tasked with abolition of American representative government and everything that it exists to protect and defend. So what is that? Is that a conflict of interest? No, it isn't actually. It's capital felony treason. It is a crime punishable by death, but they are putting it on their websites. They're not even hiding it anymore. They're publishing the fact that these so-called elected representatives are serving as elected representatives and on the very boards and non-governmental organizations that, like I said, are tasked with the abolition of our freedom and liberty. So these are the crimes. These are the crimes. These are real crimes, and they come with real penalties, and they are on the books. So take, for example, 18 USC 2381 through 2390. I'm just going to go ahead and list them. It starts with 2381, treason. These are all under Title 18. 2382, misprision of treason. Misprision of treason means all who knew or should have known and did nothing. 2383, rebellion or insurrection. Seditious conspiracy, advocating overthrow of government, registration for overthrow, recruiting services against the U.S., enlistment to serve against the U.S. These are all crimes. And like I said, they come with penalties. But what difference does that make if nobody knows that these exist and there's no enforcement mechanism? We absolutely do not advocate the death penalty for this, but the merciful approach, okay? So there is pure evil among them. There is no question about that. You can probably just rattle off the number of really, really bad ones that, that actually deserve it, but we still do not advocate for that. We are most happy to presume that, most will choose constitutional rehab, which is what we call it, rehabilitation, over excruciating yet lawful consequences. These are the highest of crimes, and short of the death penalty, must be punished to the fullest extent of the law, not the made-up statutory figments of imagination of the organized crime syndicate, but those legitimate, lawful, and just penalties already long on the books, but totally ignored. So the reason that we feel, that something's wrong is because with a God-given right to liberty, that's in our DNA. So when anything comes close to violating that, you can feel that. You feel that in your heart, in your soul. You feel that down to your core. Anything that goes against your rights is wrong. Remember, no act of government contrary to the Constitution can be valid. That's either 100% true or it's 100% untrue. And since it's true, then lawless acts of government are null and void. They are unenforceable. In law, they do not exist. We, the boss of government, the boss of the organization, the boss of the real organization, I should say we, the boss of the legitimate de jure constitutional republic, we have got to know how to restore that reality. Because we have lost control of it, though, the organized crime syndicate imposturing as government invents the most contrary of things and enacts it. And when we fight against that, what technically doesn't exist, so it doesn't exist in law, but they're actually out there doing it. And then we fight against that and say, well, we want to stop this bill for something that they're not even empowered to do in the first place. Then what do? We're technically fighting against what doesn't exist. In order to do that, it has to exist. So literally, when we are trying to stop bad bills, bad legislation, bad acts of government that have no lawful authority to even exist, it's not possible to fight those things in the conventional ways and not make it worse. It's not possible to do that. When we fail through our best efforts to stop what shouldn't exist, it gives the organized crime syndicate the data they need to creep on, like we've seen in the last couple of years, with even worse. So when we go around and complain to our legislators, our boards, our councils, and we beg them not to do things that they're not allowed to do in the first place, then what you're telling them is that not only do you not know the limitations on government, but you don't really know who you're talking to, that you think that you're speaking to government, when what you've got looking all government-like and everything before you is the order-taking Goomba level of the organized crime syndicate. They're not the bosses of anything. They're the middle level. They're the Goomba street thug level of the organized crime syndicate, and you're asking them to stop doing Goomba things. They're not going to. You do your best to educate them on your issues, the crappy education standards, the hypersexualization of children, the catastrophic injury and death from known poisons in vaccines, intolerance of high density Wi-Fi in schools, and housing clusters, injury and death from smart meters, the catastrophe of unaffordable centralized sick care, healthcare, and common sense gun legislation, all of these things and many more. You can layer on all the reasons that your bad thing is so bad and why they should vote down the bill, as if more bad things that you can layer on, the more valid your opposition, when all that does is kill your argument. When you say one word about any of that, you negate the only thing that matters, that government has no business in any of it in the first place. There are so many, and I've been at this for a decade, and it's the same things over and over. But for example, in the education sector, the problem with education and fighting back on education, so-called fighting back, is that you have people that are in the education for a certain period of time. You have a certain number of kids, your kids are in and out of schools, and as soon as you really figure it out, and I don't think that a whole lot of people actually figure it all out. But as soon as you think you've figured it out, your kids are cycled out, and then it's over. And then then you just go back to life as you knew it, right? There are so many examples, and they just are repeating. And those things that we were talking about 10 years ago, look, get your kids out of school because this is coming. And what are they telling us? One of the things that happened with me was, oh, Catherine, you can't say that about the national sexuality standards and all of that kind of stuff because that's not in our schools yet. But I'm like, you think that's not in the schools? Contracted third-party standards for K-12 education for 77 million children under the U.S. Department of Education, and you think it's not coming? It's coming. Get your kids out. No. That's not happening at our school. If I only had a penny for every time I'd heard that, I'd be super wealthy. And this is how this happens, is incrementally, those things that people could not wrap their heads around now, they're going down to the mic and speaking. Going down to the mic and saying, how dare you? The school has no business teaching our kids pornography or grooming them for pedophilia and that kind of thing, which is happening. That's going on. Actually, I was set to read a piece that would shock and blow your mind if you haven't already heard it. And that's actually really kind of my goal. But, that's what we have. And one of the reasons for that is because we're going down there, we're present for that stuff. They're doing it, they're pulling it off because it is the global agenda. And they know that they can get away with it because there is no oversight and accountability. There's no accountability for anybody who's doing this. It is against the actual law, and they're doing it anyway. And then because of the fact that we go down to the mics and we speak our, grievances and so forth, and we're going to do, whatever action it is that we're going to do, there is no individual accountability for the individual oath taker, and the entire operation continues on. So it is a continual theft of liberty. That's where we've gotten. 5 years ago, nobody could believe. We just didn't speak that way in polite company, but it is the order of the day for our kids in school. What we do by going to our representative government and saying, we're going to give you what for, we're going to hold you accountable, you will be accountable, and then nothing ever happens, then all we do is make it more apparent that we don't know what to do. Okay? The consequences are not in one being unelected, being voted out of office. That is not a consequence. Walking off the job, walking off the job, one of the things that people are attempting is pulling bonds and things like that. Okay, so yes, it sounds like a great idea. And yes, you get a satisfaction. Boy, it is really, it can be really satisfying, delicious, in fact, when somebody gets so scared they walk off the job and all that stuff. But when they walk off the job, they don't seek reelection or they retire early or what have you. That's not a consequence either. They have benefited off the public trust. Everything they and their spouse have and own is presumed. If you serve in public, it doesn't matter if it's 15 minutes or 15 years or 150 years. It means that everything that you and your spouse own is presumed to have been gotten off the public trust. So when you violate the public trust, everything you and your spouse own is subject to seizure. That is a consequence. But just patting them on the head and letting them go and then saying, wow, that was really satisfying, it's still not a consequence. And in fact, it's only making it worse. It just keeps perpetuating because we're literally telling them that there's nothing that they can't get away with.
Well, there you have it. Thank you very much, Catherine. She's definitely created a context for a conversation, huh? Lots of points of view there that are very, very strong. She said she wanted to shock us, and I think she has, shock us into reality here. It's not a pretty picture. You can file this under the category of how bad is it really? If you are not feeling well and you go to a doctor and you want him to tell you straight, don't you? Just don't sugarcoat it, doc. Just tell me, how bad is it? And so that's what we're doing tonight. Definitely want to hear about solutions. The Commoner Law Group definitely has a very robust solution for this situation we're facing, and you'll be hearing about it tonight and for the rest of this year because it's a big project. But we want to hear from you. What is your experience with the United Nations, perhaps where it has hit you in your communities, how it's reached its tentacles down into your community? Or maybe you have some stories about the worldwide bureaucracy and some of the nefarious things they do at the global level. So it's okay to comment tonight about really how bad it is. We can pile on. Everyone promised me you don't get too depressed, but we're just going to face the monster, stare that monster right in the eyes and see how really, really bad it is. We aren't going to pull any punches. If you want to raise your hand and think of the worst aspect that you personally have heard of or you personally know of because of the United Nations and what it means to us. But likewise, for solutions, we're here to hear what people have for solutions, whether it's a meta solution, as Catherine put forth, that we need to restore the Republic and give up naive notions that we have a government at all. Or you might have some other meta strategies, or maybe you have some very tactical strategies that you're employing today in your community in real time. Let's hear it all tonight. So let's go ahead and hear from Private Nobody. Is this the same Private Nobody, but now it's a man called Private Nobody?
Also called Harold Ellis.
Also called. Good to hear your voice again.
Okay. This has been on my plate for many years. I was blessed to have a father who was a student of history, and I caught the bug from him. I've been following this over 40 years, um, because you really have to go back in history to see the repetition of what's been happening. This goal for worldwide dominance um, has been going on since the Tower of Babel. But let's just come fast forward to where we at now, because that history can take a long time. The thing I believe people need to understand is that this international communistic organization, I don't even call it a government, is based on Admiralty Maritime Jurisdiction, which most of us know, only deals with persons, not people. So we have to understand the jurisdiction of things before we can actively take an approach. Because what I've been seeing over the years, and as far as law, I've been involved with the law for about 34 years, is that people mix jurisdiction. They try to bring in the law of the land into the law of the sea or vice versa, and it doesn't work. One of the things that has happened, we've been tricked into contracting with these entities, starting from our parents when we were born into this world. You know, most of our parents didn't know what was going on, and created a pledge to the state that rendered us property of the state under the doctrine of parens patriae.
Which state is that? Because we're talking about the United Nations. Is it some entity subordinate to the United Nations, or is it independent of the United Nations?
Well, right now, as Catherine correctly pointed out, is you have this myriad of agencies or entities that are all plugged into. Ever since 1776, when Adams Weishaupt and his Illuminati was exposed, they made it an effort that would never happen again. So what they did was they operated through satellites that all went to one direction, but they were all sporadic. So when people look at them, they wouldn't see that they were all still going to that one same common goal. And like Catherine had pointed out, how all these tentacles all come up until one thing. And actually, it actually is a level above that, which most people don't talk about because it can get, very emotional. But the fact remains, the Vatican and the Jesuit order is at the top of the pyramid. And most people stop at the bankers or the United Nations, they stop there, but that group, that entity answers to another entity that is above them. So, because if you look at the principles that have been articulated and put into effect over the centuries, I would say the last 3 centuries, come out of the Jesuit orders and based on the ideals by Ignatius of Loyola. And it starts in the mind, and especially the mind of the youth. And they have successfully denigrated reality in people's minds. Just about most things that people believe, I would say 80% are lies. But because people don't research, people don't read what they ought to read, and people just not aware because of the what my father used to call it, the I forget what term he used it, the power of pacification. The people's minds are not in what was going on. So let me wrap this up.
Power of pacification. I got to take a minute for that one. That's what is that again? The power of pacification is what the Jesuits are saying use as
just the ruling elite to keep our minds off of things that we ought to be focused on.
Aha, got it.
Yeah. And so I don't want to monopolize too much time. So the thing I believe is a first step to correcting the problem is disengaging from that jurisdiction. I'm talking about the Maritime Admiralty jurisdiction, which is based on our birth certificate estates. We want to divorce that. You could still utilize it at arm's length, but if you're legally enjoined with it, they have jurisdiction over the body as surety or trustee. So once you sever that, then they have to deal with you as a man or a woman, which is a totally jurisdiction. They have no jurisdiction, just like Catherine pointed out, the order of authority, God, man, government, courts, persons, corporations, etc. That's the natural order. That's the true order. And like she said, they twisted it upside down. And that's what they've done. So what you do once you disengage from the system, I'm talking about just from joinder. You don't have to go away from the system altogether, because they actually created the birth certificate estate so we can operate in commerce. But what most people didn't know, that they were in joinder. So you have to, there's several processes you can do to let the correct the status of the record by the state and federal government. Some people even go as far as the United Nations and the Vatican to make this separation clear, that you are not the legal person and the legal person is not you. This organization that Catherine is speaking about only has jurisdiction over persons in joinder with the birth certificate estates. And this premise is pretty much used all across the world. It's just not here. It's all across the world. And so that's part of the mechanism they use to gain control over the bodies, which they consider property, chattel. Matter of fact, in the statutes, they state man or other animals. Look up that phrase, you'll be shocked.
Wow.
They look at man, and this is in federal statutes, man or other animals. And they look at us as animals, chattel, property. So you want to divorce yourself from that. And that's the first step.
I understand. Very good. Thank you so much. Private nobody. So thanks. That's great. Remember, I invited comments around how bad it really is. And so maybe there's maybe the United Nations is as bad as it seems in terms of central global control. Maybe there is a higher order above that on the pyramid. And then as far as solutions, we also heard to disengage by changing your status, I presume, which is a very common conversation that we get here at during our meetups and things. So let's go to Monique now. How are you tonight?
Hi, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing great, thanks. Great to be with you.
Good, thank you. So I have a few quick comments and then a question. You know, I do teach and I guest teach, and I have seen the, I guess the new sex ed curriculum, if you would, for 7th grade. And I just, you know, I saw some terms, transsexual, asexual. For me, they didn't seem that bad. And I say that because I didn't see anything in there that was talking about the actual acts itself. So I was happy about that because, you know, I've read that this is what is being taught, and I don't agree with that. But my question is regarding the UN. So maybe some people know the site called vaxchoice.com. On there is a criminal complaint that you can file with your local law enforcement under universal jurisdictions for under universal jurisdiction for crimes against humanity. And I did that with my local LAPD, and I went into the detective unit, and it was a whole packet. I had signed it. The attorney who prepared it, you may have seen him before. He's an international attorney, Todd Callender. And so I went in, I presented it to the detective, Larson is his name. And at first he wasn't going to accept it at all. But then finally he did. He only gave me an incident number. He would not give me a case number. And he referred me to the UN. And I tried to explain to him that that was not going to do anything. And of course, he didn't help. I did go back again with another activist, and again, it was the same thing. So my question is, number one, why did he refer me to the UN? And number two, is there anything that I could have done to have gotten that case number? Because he was obliged, he was obligated to do that, because it is under his universal jurisdiction. Thank you. And I have it all on tape.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. I love it. That kind of initiative is, to me, is inspiring. And it's also educational, because you wouldn't know the kind of response you get until you tried. And you really did bring the full case forward, didn't you? I bet you made it very clear. You had documents and everything, right?
Yes, yes.
So-
Pictures, laws, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any particular answers for you. I'm actually curious to know what you have, how you've answered those questions already yourself. What are some of the things you've thought of?
Well, I didn't call it the UN, I'll tell you that much. I did hear that there was another person that was finally able to get a case number up in, I believe it was Sonoma County. And last I heard, people were being told to just give the case number if they were vaccine injured, not to get into other things. So I don't know whatever happened. Thank God I'm not vaccine injured. I kind of just left it from there. It has been rattling in my head with the more and more evidence that comes out, to contact Detective Larson again and say, hey, I want this case number. The UN is not helping with this, but I didn't know how to pursue it after that. Yep.
Very good, Monique. So I'm going to leave that question out there. If folks want to raise your hand and address Monique's question. I know that Catherine will. We're going to wrap, Catherine, just so you know, we're going to wrap up with, again, you already hinted at it. You already indicated in your video presentation what you say the solution is, but I'm going to allow you to go ahead and say more fully what you say as the strategy, to the meta strategy, really, to win. As we listen to these individuals talk about different strategies and tactics that they're using, we want to keep that alive. Again, so we're listening for your comments, everyone, about how bad is it really? You know, if we have not fully characterized how horrible it is, you think we're missing an element about really how bad it is, please bring it forward. And then what do you think of as solutions as well? Jackie is here. How are you, Jackie?
I'm fine. How are you today?
Doing very well, thanks.
Great. So I worked at a school district. I was precluded from the school district. And one of the teachers showed me the lesson that they have to learn. Actually, it was for the special ed kids. They had stick figures showing them how one person is bend over backwards and the other one is to go on top of that. It was ridiculous. I couldn't believe that they were doing this in the school. I was irate. Anyway, this teacher was supposed to teach it not with those type figures, but the same lesson. And he refused. He retired. And a lot of the teachers are refusing to do that. And I couldn't believe that that is actually in the school. It is there, evident. And parents need to make a stand, take a stand in this, because I don't think they have a choice whether their children get to learn it or not. Before we had to sign for sex education. I believe now it's not a parent choice whether their kid gets it or not. It's going to be in their lesson. So we all need to start standing up and having a voice, because if we keep letting them walk over us, we're never going to get anywhere. And I agree with a man called Private Nobody. I learned the same thing he learned. I mean, as long as we're that US citizen, actually, we're under their jurisdiction and they can control us. Um, I don't know. People are just so scared of this, and we have to stop being scared. It's more of us than it is of them. And with unity, we have power and we can withstand anything. So that's what I feel that people need to do. And as far as, these agencies, they're a hot mess because I'm dealing with them and they don't want to give you any information. They don't want you to, rarely want you to file your documents when you go to certain places. They give you the runaround. But whenever you go to these places, always bring someone so you have a witness. And I know the young lady said that she recorded it, but I hope she has somebody with her because honestly, they do treat you different when you have people with you. So that I do want people to know. But we just have to stand up. It's too many people that have to say that are sleeping. Oh, I don't want to do anything. Oh, I don't want to mess with because I don't want this. That's why they're controlling you now. And it really bothers me because we, the people, are more powerful than them people. We're over them, but people don't realize it because they've flipped the script on you because they've mind controlled everybody with, the majority with that. But when you open your eyes and know the power that you have, you'll be all right. That's my take on what's going on. It's when they can let you bend over and do what they need to do to you, they're going to continue to do it until we stand as one.
Yeah, that's what those stick figures, they were showing us what they're doing to us collectively. Sounds like screwing us over. Thank you very much, Jackie, for your contributions tonight.
Yes, Theo, you're welcome.
All right, Sue Ann Caesar's with us. Sue Ann Caesar is, you may know her name. She's one of our common law specialists, and she's the leader of the new commoner law and legal research group. And she's also one of the instructors in our free traveler membership, the Don't Fear the DMV course. So Sue Ann, what's on your mind?
Well, I told you with the go to court group, the failure they have been having. And what I learned is that I go through a lot of the statutes, and the government has gone around and decided that anybody who's a government official does not have to take an oath. Oh, let's see. If they don't take an oath, then they don't owe a allegiance to we the people. So how bad can it get? Well, they're doing a lot of different things that obviously we the people have begun to realize they don't have the right to do, but they seem to be continuing to do that. But I like to say one thing, okay? I never changed my status, and I was very, very successful. So those people who believe they have to change their status to make them not vulnerable to the governmental officials that are doing the things they're not supposed to be doing, I don't believe that's absolutely necessary. I got my rights when I was born. I didn't get them because I live in this country. I got them because I was born. I have them. I don't have to change my status. I am who I am. Now, yes, my parents did do a couple of things that are not for my my benefit, but they have not done anything that I can't get past. And I know I can get past it. But one of the things I always did was that when I went to court, I never put myself in a place where I was trying to think of things out of my brain when they'd ask me a question. If they asked me a question, I always said, it's in my paperwork. And if it wasn't in my paperwork, I'd lie to them and act as if it was. And I would always use my paperwork, and I would read it from my paperwork. And my paperwork generally had something to do with some court case in which they told me I had the right to do what I was doing. And they didn't like that. And, that's how I handled my stuff. And it's so, like I've told Clint, okay, before I will go to court, I want to know I'm going to win. And since they've been making some changes, okay, I have to go and discover those changes, which is why we started the research group, because the research group is definitely doing some very interesting things. And I've got some stuff from a few of those people. And, but I've always been quite successful. I can use court cases. I can use their code sections against them. And as Teresa Bucala does, she goes in and she looks at their website. She looks at their code sections. She looks at court cases, and she uses against the individuals. And I've told her I want a copy of the number of people that she's had that have left their job because of what she's doing. And she keeps doing it. And last weekend, I got another phone call from her saying that someone else had just quit their job because of what she's doing. And what she's doing is absolutely excellent. So that's, from my standpoint, I don't worry about my status. My status is who I am, period. And I don't go into a lot of things about my status. I just use court cases and code sections that they're to follow. And when I had to appeal any of my cases, I used their code sections to show that they had done things they should not have done. And that worked for me because I always won.
Fantastic.
I think that's enough, don't you think?
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah. So you can see there's some, in terms of the meta strategies, some broad meta strategies, different people are dedicating time and energy in different directions. And I'm curious to see, I just want to know and understand everyone's point of view. Private Nobody, definitely we're going to get some clarification from you. I just want to check and see if anybody else wants to chime in too about how bad is it, this international centralized control under the auspices of the United Nations and other international agencies, these treaties that presidents and have signed us onto. Are we still free despite all of that?
Yes.
Yes.
I think we are.
Well,
It's just knowing how to go about it.
Very good. So yeah, often comes down to real life situations. So, we've been talking about schools a lot, but if you're international trade, if you're an importer and exporter, I'm sure you'd be focusing on the international trade organizations rulings and how they're interfering and they're doing crazy, unimaginable, unbelievable things to your business, trying to do international import and export or something. Or if you're a pilot and you want to fly about, and then you're bumping into this international transportation organization or aviation organization that's promulgating rules left and right that everyone around you, all the other pilots are saying, well, don't you know we have to follow the rules now? And you're just aghast. So again, if you have anything you want to add, anyone, about how bad it is, let's pile on. Let's not sugarcoat it. There's plenty of time for solutions. And again, Catherine's going to tell everyone her meta solution. And yet let's hear from you all as well. Let's see, Victoria, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very well, very well. Glad you're here.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thank you so much for having this. And it's great to be in this wonderful circle of freedom lovers again. And I actually had a question related to what Sue Ann was saying. And I've been hearing some interesting things recently and kind of further exploring the citizen and national question and all that. But what really surprised me is yesterday someone spoke who had actually been naturalized, had said that there is a citizen with a big C and a little c. And I was interested in hearing Sue Ann's and anyone else's perspective on that, and sort of just what their thoughts might be, and diving into that a little bit, since that's something that's I wasn't aware of until yesterday.
Wow. Okay. It's a fresh topic. Good. Good. Yeah. Just so you know, the topic has come up enough. Well, about just about every class we have, where it's just a broad general discussion like this outside of our courses. There are always people who, and I mean without exception, every single time we have an open forum like this, there are people who come to talk to us about the straw man, our name in all caps, our status as citizens versus nationals. And, I appreciate the research and the respect of law that's guiding these comments. At the same time, our featured specialists at the Commoner Law Group have said over and over again that they've been successful, and that's what people want. They want to know what works. They've been successful without having done anything of the sort. So, I plan to have a full-blown open forum conversation very soon about this topic. And so I'm going to ask as a raise of hands, don't worry, Kimberly and Private Nobody, we know I'm going to call on you for general comments, but just for the moment here, if you received an invitation from the Commoner Law Group for a confab, I'm not sure exactly how the format will go, but it basically will be taking on this question and having everybody who either has direct experience with doing it or just has general curiosity, would you attend? Is this something that would be interesting to you to learn about how to disengage from the system, as Private Nobody did in a very specific way through paperwork and declaring to your Attorney General or to your Department of Justice or to the United Nations or the Vatican or to whomever through formal paperwork to make sure and to hear about the stories and what's the purpose behind it and how have people benefited from that. Is there any risk in doing it? And could you not accomplish the same things without it? And it doesn't look like it's a hugely popular subject. Just 4 people out of 34 people would come to such a thing. 5 people. Okay, that's good feedback. Maybe I'll hold on for it. Looks like people are okay. Yeah, thumbs up or raise your hand. Any kind of reaction at all from the reactions tab at the bottom of your screen. Just take your cursor down at the bottom of your screen. I want to make sure you're not just not chiming in because you don't know where it is. At the bottom of your screen, you'll find a little reactions tab has a little picture of a smiley face. Click on that and it gives you any number of reactions. So, okay, it's maybe around, it's getting closer to, let's see what we've got here. Total count of, now it's up to 10 people. Okay, good. Of course, we would invite all of you, when you do get that invitation, that you send it to the folks who are interested in that. I assume when we do this topic, that the word will go out. From what I could tell, people who are state nationals are pretty well connected, and so they could spread the word. And we'll get definitely a strong representation from people who have gone through the process, how they first learned it, what appealed to them initially, how much trouble it took, and what benefits they've gotten from it. All right, so thanks for everyone for raising your hand and chiming in on that. It's good feedback. And if you have feedback for us in general, write to info@commonerlaw.com. Our website is commonerlaw.com. You can read about and learn about our courses. We also have our videos, like this one will be recorded and put up onto YouTube. We're replicating on Rumble as well, because already we've had 2 videos struck down because of a breach of community guidelines related to not following the narrative on the COVID stuff. So all it takes is one person, doubting some health official on one of our calls to risk getting taken down. That's not new. This has been happening. I just want to let you all know that, yeah, it's still happening. So look forward to that next class. Check out our courses that we have available already at commonerlaw.com. And again, any suggestions or feedback you have for us, info@commonerlaw.com is our email. So I want to hear from Kimberly. You've been waiting patiently.
Hi, Clint. Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here very much. It got bad for me about 8 months ago because I chose to leave a job that I had been at for 11 years because they said, you can still work here, but if you don't vaccinate, we won't pay you. And I said, okay, bye. And so, but actually that kind of turned out well because it got me out of that sort of delusional place. And I found other places to work, and I found a number of people that are more of like mind. So in a way, it was kind of a gift, but it also really scared me and it made me feel unsafe. And so I don't know how the UN is connected with this. I know you were talking about the UN before and I missed part of it, but it scares me so much that this pandemic treaty through the WHO may happen and reach out back to me and say that my life will be limited if I don't get something I don't believe in. That's like, I think about leaving the country. I'm fantasizing where is safe. I heard that Brazil just refused any WHO treaties. I didn't look into that. I don't know if that's really true, but somebody sent me that. So I'm like thinking, where can I go and be free?
Very good. Yeah. There's well, that's the whole point of the United Nations and the World Health Organization is they don't want to give you any place to escape to. And I believe that to be their intention. Everything I see, they don't want any exceptions. They're not any one exception could be a threat to their overall scheme. So they have no tolerance for exceptions. But you have, maybe some governments once in a while will have for a period, they might have an administration that might buck the system a little bit, but the momentum is pretty strong. I'm one to fight at home. I do travel myself, but I am a Californian. I live in the county of San Francisco, and I have a loyalty there. And the same dynamics that go on in my county go on in counties all across the country. And my prescription, and Catherine is going to talk more about this, is a program coming. It's called Restoration, where we, the people, reconstitute the republic from the counties in which we live. And anything short of that is going to be. I mean, I'm not being so singular and exclusive about this approach, because it's possible to do more than one thing at a time. If someone's got a gun to your head, you definitely want to deal with that immediately. But we're talking about a longer term, a long range solution that, again, you heard in the presentation by Catherine already, that we don't have a government. We don't have a republic. Brazil doesn't have a government. Brazil or any nation you might imagine who's part of this worldwide scheme. They're just agents of the United Nations. That's the bad news tonight. So yeah, stay with us, Kimberly. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for your spirit. Thanks for walking through the tough times and coming out maybe better off.
In a way.
Is, to me, that just is the grace of God. And I'm always buoyed by my faith. And even though things don't look great sometimes, I know in my heart, and I'm glad that you're reminding me again that there are bigger things at play, and that our well-being and what's best for us will come to fruition one way or another.
Thank you, Clint.
Awesome. Okay, so then Private Nobody, you want to clarify some things?
Yes, I think that there was a misconstruement of the term status correction.
Mm-hmm.
Sue Ann is absolutely 100% correct. Your status in this world has not changed since you were born. My focus and other people's focus is a term that I developed called status correction of the record. Has nothing to do with you. Has everything to do with the legal person and its connection to you. And based on what's going on worldwide, I think it's apropos to have some sort of record on record with these different agencies, courts, etc., so that it doesn't come as a surprise when you are encountered with the beast. You already have a record in place. She's correct. You can argue from the standpoint of where you're at when you go into these court proceedings. In my experience, especially the last 3 or 4 years, I don't even go to court because of the record. So I don't even have to go in and still win. So the less you engage, the better off you are. And to be to have a record to go before you, even if you have to be present, don't use the word appear. If you have to be present, then all you have to do is what she says. I stand on my papers. I rely on my papers. It's in the papers. So you don't have to add anything to the record. So it's a personal choice. You can go in and do it as she does it, or you can do it to have a preemptive strike so that when they do come, you have a certified record on hand to squash out the whatever they put before you and end the proceeding. So it's a personal choice, but it has nothing to do with your status. As she correctly stated, your status has been the same since birth. It's the status correction of the record because their record has you and joinder with the birth certificate estate. You want to dispel that presumption. That's it.
Got it. Dispelling presumptions. I love it. Thank you. So what do you think of the idea of having a dedicated forum online here like this for this subject?
I think it's extremely important that people understand the minute differences. So I think it would be a very good course or program to have, because if you don't understand that basis and how you and the entities interact, then you're lost. I think it's paramount.
Okay, great. You sound like somebody who could speak very authoritatively about it. So maybe we could feature
Well,
you.
I do teach it.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, anyone else? Hopefully you could invite some other folks too to create some dynamism around the conversation.
Yeah.
Some people who maybe have who've applied it differently or have had different experiences, varieties. I'm sure there's a variety of experience once you look into it, huh? Different people.
Yeah, it's more than one way to skin the cat. So
and then more. Okay. Yeah, I'd love to work with you, baby. If you want to send me an email, if you're interested in partnering up on something like that, let's do it.
okay.
Okay. Thanks again. Raise your hand again if there's anything more you want to add. It's wonderful to have you.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. J, just the letter J. How mysterious.
Jason, how are you, Clint?
Hi, Jason. Good.
Yeah, I've participated a number of times before. Yeah, I go to a church basically in San Jose called Calvary San Jose, and in California, and they basically have been under attack for the past years. They were one of the only churches in the California that stayed open during the pandemic, and the pastor, his family, and the associates and the church itself were all sued by, I'm going to agree with Mr. Private Nobody, a Jesuit stronghold here in Santa Clara, because Santa Clara University is a Jesuit school, and the law attorneys and everybody from the top down are all Jesuit trained, and they have sued the organization, and they basically fined the church. I believe that the fine is over $4 million now. And even though the Supreme Court had ruled upon everything, they the lower guys in the court system and everything have just ignored it. So just like everybody said, like the idea that this doesn't exist, that they can just ignore the law, don't have to follow it, even when somebody else overrides them with like the Supreme Court, and they can just do what they want because maybe they're not elected, they're selected, and all these different things. It's like when you see it firsthand and you can see the whole, church organization and everybody directly affected, putting liens on their properties, putting, all these different things personal, not just like a 501c3 type thing, then you say to yourself, yeah, there's something more going on here. There's something very nefarious going on here. Because even at this moment in time, right now, the case is still going on, making no news, no headlines, no nothing. And it's just quite amazing. Like, why would there be anybody purposely trying to keep a church, closed or fine them or penalize them from something that had happened like a year or two ago, when in reality, right now, all of California is wide open, and nobody has to have a mask or vaccine or anything like that to be able to attend, and yet they're still just ignoring all that and still penalizing and everything. So how bad is it? It can get pretty bad, because I mean, if the church, let's say, were to lose the case, the whole church is immediately shut down, right? And like that affects thousands of people and thousands of people's lives.
What are the fines up to now?
I think they're going up $50,000 per week. So I think it's up to $4 million now. $4 million. So, one little church usually can't handle more than $1 million, right? Anything over $1 million is usually pretty big deal. So when they start doing it on a church level and a personal level, that's when it starts getting crazy. And you wouldn't even, I mean, like, it doesn't make the news. Nobody would hear about it. It's just crazy,
Now you're seeing it barefaced right in your face. It's the undeniable, the criminality. It's not just incompetence. It's not even ordinary, just or vanilla corruption. This is coordinated. But how would you summarize it?
I mean, to me, it's definitely something where, let me just give you an example. Like, for let's say the depositions, right? In a normal case, you would have depose one side and the other, right? So our pastor has had to go into multiple depositions, and the other side, their attorneys, have been able to delay and delay and delay, and then throw up like a lower level person having nothing to do with the case and claim that that's okay. And then, they have to fight that to say that's not all right. This is not the person that we needed to depose, and over and over and over. So they just keep on having like up and down the whole level, right? Whether it be the district attorneys or the whatever it might be that are trying to do this, they're all okay with it. So it's a pure corruption from top to bottom. And it's like obvious, I guess, is what I mean. Like, if you look into the details of the case, you can say, wow, this person is in cahoots with this person. They're married to this person. They know this person, and they basically are just all playing games. And you're just like, wow, it's just like hard to believe. No matter what things you try and file against them, no matter what things that you are in the right with, somebody else who is blocking it or denying it or whatever, allowing it, you know, whatever it might be, it's like almost 100% corruption, top to bottom. And that's why after I started digging into it a little bit more with what Mr. Private Nobody was talking about with the Jesuit order, I really do think that this Jesuit type of stronghold of knowledge of the law, putting everybody in place, selection, not election, and everybody's marching to a different order other than the Constitution and the United States and all the rest of that. Even the Supreme Court. I mean, that was my example. Like, Supreme Court actually says that they're not allowed to do this, and yet they're ignoring it and doing it anyway. And you're like, whoa, something greater than the Supreme Court is in power right now, and that's blows you away. So, anyway.
Fascinating. I live in San Francisco, and that San Jose is pretty close, and I've been watching that situation very closely because at the inception of the problem, way at the beginning, the very beginning, our common law specialist who leads the Great American Law Series at commonerlaw.com, Fritz Van Mastreit, offered to the pastor there a different course of action, not to hire a lawyer in particular, because we know that lawyers, I don't know the lawyer that he's working with, that the church is working with, but there's a lot to learn about lawyers, and their allegiance is not primarily and first and foremost to their client. It comes as a surprise to some people. And so when I say we, I mean we advocates of common law were encouraging the pastor to just stand on his natural rights and to do a conditional acceptance where you say, okay, I accept to close my church and all the other things, as long as you can prove that it's constitutional, that it's not going to harm us in any way. You can create your whole list of conditions. You've heard of the conditional acceptance, perhaps?
Yeah, I am a member of your your group from the get-go, so I am fully aware of that. I actually approached him on that same exact subject to see what would happen, and he had said that he had remembered that you guys had approached him, but his I guess the group that they had been counselors and whatnot that had met as a group, and they thought this other firm would be doing it differently, obviously. And it's the group is out of I believe they're out of Idaho, and there's a lady in charge of the group, and she's the lawyer. She's come down multiple times and given the church updates and whatnot. And they're hoping to win, and they should win, and they are waiting to win. But like, it's amazing how corrupt it really is from top to bottom. So I still hold out hope that things will happen. But even if it did, let's say, even if they won like tomorrow, there would be no mention of it anywhere, because like the media would stop it from being broadcast, because nobody would want to know that they did win, And yet, if they lost, holy moly, it would be like all over the news, like, yeah, look, we got them, So to me, that's like, just like you said, pure corruption from top to bottom. So
churches are uniquely compromised, most churches in America, because they've fallen prey to the incorporation, as to be incorporated as a church, which then has them subject to all manner of rules and regulations. So
exactly.
I
think there's a lot of people that are fully unaware of that, because I mean, almost every other church had to shut down. There's a church right around the corner from us, North Valley Baptist, and they got big giant notices on the doors with tape that said if you break this seal, then you're subject to all these different fines and whatnot. And so they just left the doors closed to the church as a result. It was terrible. I mean, like, hundreds of people were just standing outside. So some people obeyed what they were told, and some people tried not to, and then they've been fined for it. And so it's been, it's just.
And how many sermons have you heard in your lifetime about who really is the church? I love those sermons, because the people think, well, the church is the building or the,
Right. Ecclesia, right? I went to, I studied some stuff on a Revelation timeline decoded.com, and it really helped me to understand the idea of the Jesuit order, what they do, who's the real church, what is our power, you know, all these different things in relationship to end time type stuff. And
well, my point is that in that courtroom where you are, what a church is but a corporation.
ah, I see. Gotcha.
And that's, I assume, I assume.
I assume so too, because I mean, like you
Like
would
all
think
the
that
other-
they would be, you know, wiser, but I think like you guys were saying earlier, it's very, very subtle. Over time, people have learned to accept the idea that, oh, hey, we're 501c3, oh, we have to do this, so we get all these benefits over here. Look at that, wonderful. And then they don't see the consequences until, you know, a decade later, when all of a sudden they say, oh, now you're subjected to all these other rules. And you got, you know, you got to do it or else.
Yeah, so
So-
everyone out there who's considering starting a church, if there's anyone here who wants to start a church, I'm asking you to please don't incorporate. Be free from the get-go and stay free.
Yeah.
Don't entangle yourself. Don't compromise yourself, no matter what they tell you about what you have to do or the benefits that might come from it.
So I would be interested in some of the things that you guys were talking about, the state nationals, you know, and all these different things, because I've been following a lot of different things to try and figure out which one is actually accurate and appropriate and works. And I haven't found anybody yet that's, you know, been successful in any of these things. So
The way we at the Commoner Law Group, the way we take this question and many others is we start from your real life. So the very first lesson of the Great American Law series, one of the first homework is to make a list of all of the unconscionable or unrevealed contracts that you have, you personally, and make that list. It surprised me. I forgot a couple myself until even after the course was over, and I was like, how that was so obvious. So you make your list, you find it's a little longer than you thought. And then you ask yourself, you determine for yourself, which, if any of those, do you want to go to work at ending, you know, getting rid of those contracts. And then, yes, there's the academic conversation. There's the broader, like we could have a debate, pros and cons, and have it be very high level. But what matters is your life. And in our courses, we always give people the information they need. We create a conversation to enlighten people so they're no longer ignorant, but then we support people in making choices that are consistent with what's going on in your life right now, based on your values, your predicament, your priorities. So I would recommend, you know, even before a person starts thinking about, should I take this meta strategy or that meta strategy, to just do an inventory of your life and ask yourself which unconscionable contracts are no longer tenable for you. Because you are free to contract. And some you might choose to keep some or all. But in the end, that's really what's going to help focus your education even more when you have a trajectory, when you have a specific goal in mind. Like if let's say you're a contractor and you realize that with your contractor's license, it's got all these strings attached and you just want to be able to do your work. And that's the thing that gets in your way more than anything. Then you might prioritize getting out from underneath that contract. But again, it's a case by case basis. And I really do recommend being pragmatic like that.
Sounds great. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, Sue Ann, what do you think of this conversation?
I loved his conversation. That was really good. Have you ever looked up the word a church in the Bible?
We do have searchable Bibles now, so we could search for.
Oh, yes, we do. I've had one since the 90s and I absolutely love it. But the church is you yourself in congregation with other people. That's a church. The building is not it.
And not the corporation either.
And not the corporation either. Okay.
Okay.
And And so, I find it fascinating. A lot of people don't know that the church is your body. It is that's your temple. And when you congregate, then the congregation is the church. And it doesn't matter where you go to, that's your church. So you go for a picnic over the weekend. You're not at the church, but you're still the church, and it's wherever those people go that is the church. And it's helping to support other people in what they want to do, not in what you want to do, but what they want to do. Now, that doesn't mean that what you want to do is not as important, but they're supposed to support you in what you want to do. And when you do this support stuff, that makes the church strong. So a church is not a building. It is not a place where people go to every Sunday or Saturday, depending on what your belief is on what day it's supposed to be. But it has to do with getting together and supporting each other. And that's what it's about.
Fantastic. Thank you for putting that in there. You accurately define something to really know what it is in its essence.
And that's my big thing. I love to define things, especially in my court paperwork. You always define everything. You don't leave it to the other people.
Very good. So yeah, thanks for that definition of church. You got a heart from Monique. She liked that. We'll bring this to a close with our comments from Catherine Duran. Her presentation got us all started here, gave us the context for the conversation, and she's heard a lot of reflections and reactions to that. And in the end, I'm going to invite people to join us in our upcoming program called Restoration, which is just that. It's we restoring our government, our Republican government.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Clint. And thank you everybody for your feedback and for your comments and stuff. It's really wonderful to hear. And I'm really appreciative. I want to make a comment on a few of the just quick comments on a few of the comments. And one is so we were talking about correcting of status. That's not something I'm going to dwell on, because we actually are crafting an actual class for this with open dialogue, because it is a huge thing, and it is a huge concern. But I do want to state a couple of things. Number one, statute is not law. And it was also interestingly acknowledged that what the Supreme Court says is not observed anyway, even when it is actually correct. One case being when it said literally statute is not law. Statute isn't law. That's something that's been reiterated. That's actually Williams v. US, and it's not a thorough explanation. The answer needs to be statute is not necessarily law, because statute can be law if it's pursuant to the Constitution, if it's pursuant to actual law. But as we're experiencing now, of course, obviously, no statute is actually lawful. So no current statute is actually lawful. So essentially, statute is not law. Hopefully, that exchange between Clint and Private Nobody is interesting enough to lead people to come back for more information, for more knowledge. And I say knowledge on the subject, because this is definitely something that needs to be ironed out. So I want to comment on the principal or the school official said that, to contact the United Nations. One of the reasons why you were probably instructed to call the United Nations is because all education at this point is UNESCO driven. UNESCO, if you look at the list that Clint lovingly put together for everyone, yes, you can count on is the fact that all education at this point is UNESCO driven. It is a UNESCO product, and you're going to find when you have knowledge about what is going on in education, they're hearing this stuff in what's called professional development. And their professional development, even the principals, the teachers, the admin, everybody that can get into professional development is professionally developed. And that professional development is also driven by the UNESCO, by the United Nations. Okay, so it is, Common Core is a UN product. Everything about the education system now, everything, and I mean everything except lunch and recess. And actually, I think probably even lunch and recess, because they've actually eliminated a lot of, excuse me, a lot of, this is why I'm not presenting today. A lot of the elimination of recess has to do with the fact that you have to reach a certain, you have to meet the standards. And in order to meet the standards, you have to eliminate recess, because you have to have more classroom time, and you don't have enough classroom time to actually meet the standards. And so you have to assign a massive amount, an insane amount of actual homework. So anyway, I can, much like many who preceded me, I can look at, you can show me literally any subject, any book, any textbook, any application, any subject, any day, and I will show you blatant, out in the open UN Agenda 21. It is in every single thing, every aspect of education. And so that's one of the reasons why, your principal may think that it's a good idea for you to contact the United Nations, or take it up with the United Nations. That's an ignorant statement. That's an ignorant thing to say, because the truth of the matter is, UNESCO, the World Health Organization, any agency of any agency of the United Nations is not government. The United States of America is a constitutional republic. Our system, we answer to no one. We are sovereign in all the world. So we answer to no one. All of the stuff that's going on with the president, with the World Health Organization and all that kind of stuff, the most recent summit, amendments to the treaty and all that kind of stuff. All of that stuff, 100% of that stuff is an absurdity. But like I said before, like you heard me say in the presentation, what difference does it make if the people are obeying? The people are complying. So it's not the World Health Organization that you need to worry about. It's not UNESCO that you need to worry about. It's the people that are complying that you need to worry about. That's it. It's the perception of the people that are led to believe that that's an authority. I have actually heard it stated, and this should shock and horrify you, every single one of you, and everybody you know, and everybody in America should be shocked and horrified by this. But I heard people actually saying this, that,
Excuse me, but it was a detective that told me to contact the UN. I gave him a criminal complaint.
detective. Okay,
Yeah,
detective.
principal. It had nothing to do with the school. Although I did give them information about my school too, but no, it was more about Gates and Fauci and.
Right. Okay. Well, it's all going to lead back to the UN.
Okay.
It will all lead back to the UN. It will all lead back to the United Nations Agenda 21, Sustainable Development, Agenda 2030 Agenda, 2050 Agenda. It's all going to lead back to this world global governance. As I was starting to say that, people should be shocked and horrified, having if you had heard anyone ever say that, well, if our local school boards, city council, board of supervisors, your state legislature, your governor, your president, if you're not going to get any action or any resolution out of Congress or the president or what have you, then we should take it up with the United Nations, as if it is a higher authority. That should shock and scare everyone. And if you don't understand why, I would urge you, because that is a major topic for discussion. I would urge you to come back, just continue to come back. We will go delve deep into that, because it actually is really simple. It's a question of sovereignty. We, the people, are individual sovereign men and women. We created for ourselves a servant government, a servant. It is below us. It is not above us. That's one of the major issues of correcting your status, of feeling we have to establish jurisdiction because, there's some sort of authority that is above us, or we're appealing to an authority that is above us or even parallel to us. It is the creature of our own making. We do not have to apply or appeal to the servant of our own making in order to get our sovereignty or individual authority back. We already have it. It's a matter of establishing it. And that's one of the reasons why I say it should shock and horrify everybody to think that people really do believe that a higher authority would be, and this is one of the reasons why would be the UN. And this is one of the reasons why I say very often, please, please, please do not go out talking about, the Nuremberg trials and, the Nuremberg Code and all that kind of stuff, because the Nuremberg Code has no authority. It has no authority, even though it was something that was initiated by the US. Anything out of the Nuremberg Code has no authority. There isn't another governing body that you can appeal to up, over and above the people who created the United States of America. Yes. Okay. So one thing I wanted to say that was really cute. So there's more than one way to skin a cat, but yes, but there's only one lawful and peaceful way to restore the republic. Bar attorneys may take their oath. They may swear their oath to any other body, any other organization or club or what have you. But they are required to and presumed to have sworn their oath to the Constitution, to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. So they're doing otherwise would be prima facie evidence that they are committing outright treason. So they're presumed to swear their oath on the Constitution. So that's what they must be held accountable to. Accountability is one of our 3 tenets. These are the things we're going to be discussing in future classes. And the one other thing too, the church is the body of Christ. Sue Ann said, that's absolutely correct. I'm just expanding on that. I'm not refuting that. I'm only expanding on that. So Clint and I are going to be working on a class as well on the incorporated church, because it is a big deal too. The incorporated church is an organization. An organization is the fictitious business. And incorporation means the state is the head of your organization or the head of your fictitious business. When you establish a corporation, you are establishing the state as the head of your organization. So when the state is the head of your organization, you don't have any rights. You don't have rights. So when Clint said, if you're going to start a church, what have you, do not incorporate. That cannot be stressed enough. Really, seriously, this was an act. This was an act of government. This was an act of politicians and an act of so-called government, back in the 50s that established that rule. And it's just like a driver's license. When you're 15 and a half, you go to driver's ed, you go through driver's ed, and then you get your driver's permit, and then you get your permit, and then you learn that, driving is a privilege. And you go and get your license, your permission slip to exercise your God-given unalienable right to travel. It's exactly the same principle. This is really important to understand. There are churches that are out there that are pushing for, they're church organizations, they're not churches. Almost 100%, almost 100% of churches that are out there are 501c3 or state incorporated. And if you are state incorporated, you are not a church. The church is, as Sue Ann said, the church is the body of Christ. We, the people, as the body of Christ, come together. We are not an organization. We're a bunch of people, individual sovereigns that come together.
That's it.
We're into that in future classes, right? Clay?
You could have a whole class on every single topic you just had.
Well, that is a class. That actually is a whole class right there.
Isn't it? The larger coursework, it's going to include a whole bunch of different components. It's called restoration. We're forming it now. We're clear that there is no republic, and we the people, God commanded us to take dominion over the world, gave us the freedom and everything else. So in the face of no republic, just a criminal syndicate, we the people are duty bound to restore the republic, a republic. So that's what the course is going to be all about. It's restoration. It's multidimensional. It's going to deal with all the nuts and bolts, as well as your personal character. Are you up for it? And finally, how to organize with other human beings so that you can actually have a we. We've noticed that there's a problem just in people understanding what a we is in this postmodern alienated society. So just know that it's going to be holistic. As it is still forming, we're going to do a pilot to start with a pilot group or two. So if you're interested, send an email to info@commonerlaw.com, info@commonerlaw.com, and put in the subject line #restoration. And I'll make sure to follow up with you and find out about what your interest is in creating a committee in your county. So much more about that. Hey, isn't that exciting? We want people to be successful. That's right. And so it's not just teaching you the nuts and bolts. We have to support you in how to develop yourself personally, just to be able to operate with the kind of integrity and honor required of we the people, and also to find ways to interact, organize, and unite with others on the same page with you in your county. So thanks for being here, Catherine. Thanks for this amazing topic. You're a wealth of information. Stuff about the United Nations is amazing. And I think you were recommending Rosa Corey.
Absolutely.
Koire. Watch her videos online. She goes deep dives into all the UN stuff. But what's important about Catherine, your contribution is really just to make sure that people are shocked and horrified by
I want people shocked and horrified. I want people to feel the urgency in what's going on now. That I want people to understand that you can't just keep waiting for somebody else to do and that's not you. That's in general, people are waiting for another layer of somebody or some power to fix everything up. That's not going to happen. It has to happen with us individuals. If you are inclined to get educated and to become learned about what's going on and about what can be done, what must be done, what is our alternative to one world global governance, one world global communism, put it that way. We have to come together and get fully educated and help other people to understand that there isn't any higher authority or there isn't anybody higher than we the people. So there isn't any entity, some rich guy or some military or some whatever that's going to come along and be able to restore our republic. It's not possible for that to happen. So it's really important for us all to understand and be really clear on that. And then understand the steps that are necessary to accomplish that. There's only one way, one lawful and peaceful way to restore the republic.
Okay, that's why we call it restoration, plain and simple.
Right, restoration.
All right, thanks everyone for being here tonight. I really appreciate this conversation. It's going to be recorded, so you can see it on YouTube and Rumble. You can share it around within your networks, and we want to thank you for all of your comments and your attendance here. I wish you all the best. Blessings to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you
so
very much.
God
We
bless you,
appreciate it.
everyone.
God bless you.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Blessings on every day. Blessings on
Blessings.
everyone every day.
Yes, thank
Amen.
you, Catherine. Thank you. God bless you too. Appreciate this information.
Thank you.